understanding first that you have an energetic system, and you don't even have to understand the intricacies of that energy system. Just know that the energetic system goes straight from the top of your head, basically to the base of your spine.
Hello and welcome to the Business of Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy. And guys, today we have a phenomenal day. Today's going to be a great day. We have with us an incredible person who has touched my heart and my soul and who I attribute so much of my own personal healing to. Her name is Faryl Moore, and she is a certified pranic healer. And she uses pranic healing techniques to remove blocks, traumas, negative energies, and thought forms that hold women back from achieving their purpose and intentions in this world. She helps access deep energetic shifts necessary to improve and transform not just physical, but emotional and mental health exponentially. And she specializes specifically in elevating women using her reframe, allowing to successfully remove these terrible blocks so that her clients can realize their potential. So join me in welcoming this magical woman, Faryl Moore. Welcome.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh my gosh, you truly are one of the most magical people I know. I was telling my husband the other night, I was like, I want to be Faryl in another life. I want to be just like her. I admire you so deeply, my friend. And I thank you so much for all the incredible work that you do in this world.
Thank you. I received that. Don't make me cry on the show, Tarryn.
I could start crying too. If you start crying, I'll start crying.
Okay.
So, Faryl, the reason why I invited you, and I'm so honored to have you here on the show, is because I know that my audience members can learn so much about themselves from you. And what I would love to do is start out with your story. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to this energetic work? Because this wasn't always who you were. Your story along the way is so inspirational. And maybe it was somebody you always were, but it wasn't always someone you allowed yourself to step into.
That's correct. That's correct.
More the latter. Yeah.
More the latter. Yes. So it's interesting because as a child, I was always that girl who was just a little bit different, not enough that people didn't want to be around me. In fact, it was the opposite. People didn't really understand why they wanted me to be around because I was so a little bit different, right? I always talked about things in much larger ways than other people my age would understand. So adults always wanted me around because I would talk about the universe and the world and these things that were intangible. And one of the things that made me realize that not too long ago was remembering a camp counselor who was like 22 years old, who literally wanted me at her side all of the time because we would have these fabulous conversations about things that at 11, girls don't talk about those things at 11, but I did. And then in high school, I remember I was friends with all the friend groups. I didn't have a single friend group. And nobody would admit that they were friends with me, but everybody was friends with me, right?
They all wanted to be around you.
Yes, and I never could understand that, and neither could they, and nobody could explain it. And so I just went with it and just kind of stood out as being myself. And I almost created a persona that was, this is who I am, like it or not, right? Very sort of. And I remember thinking to myself as I kept getting older and going into college, and I was like, I need to figure out what this is. So I started researching and looking into world religions and different cultures. Like, that was very interesting to me. And I grew up in a Jewish house. Let me just say that. So it was the American Jewish house. You know, you celebrated the major holidays. It wasn't very religious. But something was just not quite there for me. So I kept exploring and kept exploring. And when I was about 26, I found Reiki. Reiki opened up a whole world for me because suddenly somebody understood what I was feeling and seeing or seeing, not really visually seeing, but feeling and could see in that realm. So I played in Reiki for a while. In 2009, I got my Master Reiki Teacher Certificate. That was a long time ago. And it was a time when nobody knew what Reiki was except for those very few people who played in that space. So I was still the outsider, right? And I remember my family saying to me, what is this? So it became just the side hustle. And all along was an educator. I was a 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade English teacher. I worked my way up, got a master's degree, became an assistant principal.
That's right.
And I literally lived in this world of academia, all the while having this side practice of Reiki that I hid from everybody.
Wow.
Because they didn't align, right? And then I started working in higher education. I worked for a couple of different community colleges. I worked for an online university. As things sort of progressed, I started dabbling in more crystals and more. I played in Native American culture for a little while and those things. And then about 4 years ago, Pranic Healing fell into my lap. And from an academic standpoint, so those of you who are academics, here's how I will explain it to you. Reiki is like having a bachelor's degree in energy. Pranic Healing was like having a PhD in energy.
Wow. And
the difference really is you're still using the same meridians. So from an acupuncture standpoint, you use meridians. We still use those. We still use the same chakra system. The difference was this. Instead of using a set of hand positions to be the vessel to bring down energy, move it around and make everyone feel better, which is what Reiki does. That's a very, very basic explanation. Pranic Healing is protocol based. So just because of the industry you're in, you have something going on with your tooth. You have like an infection, let's say. I actually have a set of protocols that deal with the infection and the pain, so that I'm working certain energy centers or chakras, for those who don't know, certain chakras in a certain order to deal with the infection a certain number of times a week, just like you would. How many times a day do you take an Advil? How many times a day do you take an antibiotic? So that we deal with the infection and the pain. So that protocol-based system allows you to narrow in on what's going on. That's the physical side. The psychological side is the same thing. You have anxiety. Well, what are the energy centers that are associated with the anxiety? Okay, so we deal with the protocol for the anxiety, however many times a month, a week, whatever the protocol says. But as we do that on a psychological side, we peel back layers to find the root cause. And then we deal with that. And then we continue to heal until it's gone. Because healing is a process. You're never healed, right? Healed is not a thing. You can be healing always. Because no matter what's going on, whether it's an infection or a psychological issue, your body is always in healing. We're constantly reproducing ourselves or reinventing ourselves, or we lose our skin every so often. We reproduce ourselves. We are an amazing creature that we can heal ourselves. But that doesn't mean that we're ever fully healed. It's a process, always.
I love that perspective too, because it gives so much permission to those of us who feel like, I've done the work. I've tried so hard. I've been for healing. I've been for support, and I'm still feeling this way. Or now I've uncovered a new layer. And when am I ever going to get to the bottom where I don't need more attention and healing? But that in saying it that way, we recognize, oh, wait a minute, this is still a process. This is a part of this beautiful body, mind, and
Mhm.
spirit, is that we're constantly in evolution.
Yes, because if you think about life, if you are stagnant, you don't move, you don't talk to anybody, and you literally are by yourself, not moving, doing anything, are you living?
Yeah.
Right. So every time you do something, talk to someone, engage in anything, you're receiving new energy and new information.
Hmm.
That impacts all the areas of your system. So you have no idea what one person's voice may trigger within your system.
Yes.
You have no idea what one step in one direction is going to do to your system. Literally. So living and healing are congruent. They are a constant ing. It's an action all the time. Living and healing are an action all the time.
So cool. And we're not ever stepping outside of it because, I'm thinking as a practitioner in the, in the medical and dental field, in the healthcare system, when we step into that place, into that role at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. or 7 a.m., as many of us start seeing patients at 7 a.m.,
Yeah.
when we step into that role, we kind of put ourselves to the side and think that we can put ourselves to the side and just be available to our patients. But what you're saying is there's energy happening all day.
Mhm.
There are those voices or thoughts or people saying things that might activate certain
Yeah.
energy or wounds within us. And I think that that's one of those parts in healthcare where so many of my colleagues we beat ourselves up when we start out having a great day, and then halfway through the morning we're feeling snippy and not acting in our higher selves as our higher selves would, and we start thinking, well, what's wrong with me that I couldn't make it through the morning, or I couldn't make it through the day, or I get home at night and I take it out on my kids, or I take it out on my husband. So, could you speak to us a little bit about that kind of energetic effect on us during the day?
Sure. So anytime you engage with anybody, you have the normal human interaction that everybody's used to, but you don't realize that what you're dealing with is the energy of the person who is sitting in front of you and anybody else that that person may have interacted with before they even got to you that day. Okay. Now, your 7 a.m. patient, you probably have the least number of interactions that they possibly could have in the day. But you don't know how many kids they have. You don't know how many phone calls they had at 6:30. Like, you have no idea what's gone on with them prior to them getting to you at 7 a.m. But let's just, for the sake of argument, say they got to you at 7 a.m. with a smile on their face. They've had a beautiful morning. They had coffee. They have no kids. Great. Yay. Okay. So your day starts out fabulous. Patient number 2, I don't know how long after that is, but patient number 2 comes in and they're a little less happy. They've had to deal with some traffic.
Yep.
They've had to, they had a phone call that was a little annoying. And they came in and they were like a little gritty. Okay, well, here's the first thing. You still have the energy from patient number 1 with you, and you don't even realize it. And all the people that you interacted with in the office, and you have no idea what they brought with them. And patient number 2. So you are already, and we're only talking about 2 patients. We might be at 8 o'clock in the morning at this point, 7:30 in the morning at this point.
Yeah.
You've interacted with all of the people in your office, plus the 2 patients, and everybody they've interacted with up until this point.
Yeah.
Okay. The amount of energy that is, and the potential for what that could do to you as the practitioner is, on certain days, could be insurmountable for you because it's a lot of energy. But there are just such simple things that you can do in between patients, in between seeing people, that you can do to really just eliminate the building up of energy. So the easiest one, the one that doesn't require anything but yourself, understanding first that you have an energetic system. And you don't even have to understand the intricacies of that energy system. Just know that the energetic system goes straight from the top of your head basically to the base of your spine. Right?
Faryl, can I pause you for a second? I'm going to pause
No.
you for 1 second because I'm also realizing maybe some of my listeners are thinking, what is energy? Like, what are we even talking about? What are we even talking about? Here we dove right in talking about energy, but
You're right.
I don't even know what that is. Someone might be thinking. So
Okay.
if we were to break it down as simply as possible, I mean, I think, we can have a concept of what energy is, but how do you define it?
So energy, well, first of all, energy is everywhere and everything. Like just from a really basic level, energy is everything and everywhere. There are people who feel it and see it and interact with it at a specific level. And there are people who just walk through the world and they don't, and that's totally fine. What you need to know is your physical body has outside of it an energetic field. There's actually multiple of them, but for the purposes of this discussion, just know that there's an energetic field that is like an etheric double. So it's energetically matches the shape of your outside body. Okay? Some people call it your aura. So if you're looking for a word, there's the word. Okay? That aura or energetic field exists around everybody. And here's how you will know. Have you ever stood in front of somebody else who was standing right here and you were so uncomfortable because they were literally in your space?
Absolutely.
That space is your energetic field. That's why you're uncomfortable, because they're literally in your energetic field. When people stand at a normal distance, 3 feet or whatever it is, right? 2 feet, everybody's comfort level of how far somebody needs to stand away from you is different.
It really is.
Because everybody's energetic field is a little bit different in terms of comfort level. You know those people who walk into the room and it's like they've parted the sea.
Yes.
Everybody moves out of the way and they just walk in and they're like, I'm here. They have a very large aura, a huge energy field. Everybody wants to be around them because when you learn to play with your energy, you can make it small or you can make it big.
Wow.
Okay. That's what I'm talking about when we talk about the energy field. Okay.
Totally makes sense now. And especially as medical and dental professionals, we're diving right into your energy field. I mean, as a patient, I'm right in your face.
Correct.
Cool. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you didn't get into business to be miserable. The problem is that people feel that if their business gets busier, if they start becoming more successful, that happiness will eventually set in. But it can actually get worse. This is why I created the Business of Happiness Prosperity Coaching. In this one-on-one coaching, we look at how to redefine success on your terms and re-find the joy and the passion in your dream. Visit me at thebizofhappiness.com and become the happiest business owner you know. Okay, so please continue what you were talking about the energy.
So then there's within the body, there is an energy system. And I can show you just so that you understand.
Oh, cool. So for those of you who are not watching on our YouTube channel, right now, Faryl's showing the 11 major chakras. It's a picture, Faryl, of a human body with
the energy systems or the energy centers or the chakras.
Okay.
So, and what I can do, I'll send you this so that you can put it up on the site. So
I definitely will. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you.
So the interesting thing about this is, for those of you who are into yoga, who know that there are 7 chakras, those 7 chakras are in here. There's just more, right? So it's not that we're not taking away anything, but nobody ever said there were only 7. So the thing about this that I wanted to show you is that it goes straight through. Everybody's got the same ones. There's no
starting at the top of your head and going down.
Going straight through. Correct.
Gotcha.
Now, let's say you notice when you walk in, you're like, oh, that person was just so angry today. And you feel like your body automatically wants to go, right? How many times have you walked out of a patient's room and you went, like that, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, that was so frustrating. If you imagine the side of your dominant hand is like a knife, okay? When you walk out of a patient's room, whether they're in a great mood or not, what happens is they've connected to you. Every person you talk to connects to you.
Attach themselves to you.
Attach. The side of your hand is a knife, and if you just go just above your head and you take a straight shot down just past the groin, because that's where it ends, in a definitive motion. I always like to make noise because I'm just silly that way. And I go whoosh. And then you do it again only because you have chakras on the back, but you're not going to do it up to your back. So you just go whoosh, whoosh. You don't have to make the noise. But what that does is it disconnects them immediately because they don't have time to attach deep. You will notice that the buildup of energy from others is gone immediately. If you have found that you've spent an exorbitant amount of time looking at somebody in the eyes and having a conversation, maybe you have to talk to them about something like, oh my goodness, this is going to cost you $15,000 in 5 years. And they're like a hot mess and they're crying and all the things. You can, or you're on a Zoom session. Imagine your fingers are rakes and you just like this. And then you take that and you like this.
Okay, so for those of us who are listening right now, what you're doing is Faryl took her fingers and kind of passed them over her eyes laterally.
In front of the eyes, laterally, yes.
And then pushed it away.
Pushed it away. And you'll notice, especially with the bright lights in an office like that, you may notice that things get a little brighter. And it's because what happens is when you interact that way, a normal amount of what we call energetic congestion, but it's really just attaching, happens. So if you remove it, then you're clear again. So those are two really very quick ways to do that. The other thing I will tell you is, having been an orthodontic patient in the past, if you have to leave a room to go check an x-ray or go, grab a mold or something, and you know that this patient is difficult, or you're having a difficult time because the patient has triggered you.
Yes.
May not be the patient that's the issue. Remember that things that come out of people's mouths occasionally will trigger something in you unexpectedly. Step out and disconnect. You should go into the bathroom and be like, okay, disconnect. Now, will it stop you from feeling whatever you felt? No, you're still going to have to deal with that at some point, but it will stop the momentum from building in the moment.
I have to say, because you taught this technique to me, Faryl, when we were at a retreat together, and I've been using it in the office, and it is so incredibly powerful. I can't even speak enough to it. It's become my team members think I'm crazy when they see me cutting as I go, but I don't care because it works so darn well.
Yeah.
I even have noticed that I've had to almost incorporate it between patients intentionally, like just to go from one patient, even if it wasn't a difficult conversation or it wasn't a difficult patient, just to clear myself so that I'm present for the next patient. I think we don't even recognize, my dear, beautiful listeners who are practitioners in the medical and dental fields, you don't even realize how wonderful and powerful you are in terms of taking care of your patients. And we do it so effortlessly. We forget how important these interactions are with our patients and how much anxiety and fear and previous trauma our patients come to us with. They really, especially in the dental field, there's such a huge population, such a huge percentage of our population have dental trauma experiences that have created fear in them. And when you were saying about the energetic field, we put ourselves right in their energy, right there. We absorbed all of that from them without even knowing it.
And my question is, do you, as a practice, and I don't know this, but as a practice, do we ask?
Absolutely. Such an important question. Yes, please expound.
So I'm one of those people who I don't know if it's trauma, but there's definite fear. Yeah. I don't know where it comes from. I've not explored it, but it's fear. And it's probably fear of pain, right? That's everybody's fear when they go to the dentist. It's going to hurt.
Absolutely. I think it's also, Faryl, generations and generations before us, your mouth is such a vulnerable place. When someone's in your mouth, you can't push them away, it's a very vulnerable place. We have certain things that we can do when someone's coming at us, but once they're in our mouths, you really are trapped. I think it's a fear that's inbred in us from generations ago.
Yes. So my question is, as practitioners, have you, and I'm sure there are many that do, but have you thought when you first go in and after you've had your conversations and whatever it is that you need to do, before you enter the space of getting into somebody's mouth or do you ask, may I look in your mouth?
So important.
Because yes, of course, that's why they're there. I mean, we all know that's why they're there. But there are so many people who their trauma has literally paralyzed them. And they're like, well, I can't say no, you're the doctor.
Yep.
I can't say no, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
But what if they are like terrified? Yeah. And what does that energy do to them and to you? Because now there's pain because they're clenching unintentionally.
Yeah, holding so tightly. Yes.
Their stomachs are a mess because they're holding so tightly, where just a simple question of, may I open your mouth? May I put this, may I? Just giving people permission to say yes or no. 98% of the time, they're going to say yes. That's why they came. Yeah. Right? But knowing that you care enough to ask,
yes,
removes layers of anxiety. And for you as the practitioner, also removes layers of anxiety you don't realize you have. Because every day you're unintentionally forcing yourself into this space.
Yes.
And the energy of forcing instead of receiving permission is like this versus like this.
Such a big difference.
Wouldn't your job be easier if it was like this?
I started doing this several years ago, intentionally asking. And I think you've hit on such an important point, because we think they've signed the informed consent. They've gone through the consult. They know what they're here for. Go ahead. Or we sometimes just say, okay, open wide, open wide. We don't ask. We just dictate what we want them to do, especially with children, with children. And what I noticed when I started asking was, some people took a little longer than I was on my fast-paced day ready for, which taught me a lot too. When I've asked and I say, is it all right if I touch your face, right? Sometimes it's just that. Sometimes at an exam, we just have to touch their faces. Can I touch your face? And I've had some little kids look up at me and take a moment, reminding me to breathe. So interesting, reminding me. I noticed, oh my gosh, I'm holding my breath right now.
Uh-huh. That's right.
So fascinating.
And remember that you have no idea what the person sitting in your chair is dealing with in their life. So when you ask somebody if you can touch their face, you don't know if they're a trauma survivor. What if that person had been beaten in the past? And just you touching their face sends their head into this whirlwind of, oh my God, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? What are they going to do? But they're afraid to ask. When it comes to children, here's what happens. I have a kid who asks 1,000 questions. He went to the dentist and asked you can touch my face, but why? What are you going to do? Well, what's that for? Well, how's that going to feel? And we as people want them to stop asking the questions and just let people get to it. But the truth is, these are valid questions.
Absolutely.
And so while we've created a situation in all of the world where we want to next patient, next patient, next patient, next patient, we're actually doing a disservice to ourselves. Because what about the traumas we've faced as practitioners? What if you're an abuse survivor and you have to touch people every day? What is that doing to you? What if you love dentistry, but you come home at the end of the day and you're so traumatized by everything that's happened to you in the day that you don't want to go to work the next day? And you don't know why. All of that is energy. All of that can be dealt with. And all of that can be helped by just simply disconnecting from your patients in between. I mean, some people it's more difficult than that, but this is a place to start.
It's so powerful. It's so interesting. And it's so fascinating how for decades we can beat ourselves up thinking there's something wrong with us because we're not feeling the way we think we're supposed to be feeling, and not realizing that, and I love that you said this, not realizing that there's something we can do about it.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's not difficult, right? It doesn't require you to go find somebody to help you with it all the time. There's lots of things you can do for yourself. Taking quiet moments to breathe, very important. Reset yourself. It's literally just resetting yourself. Taking the time to remember why you're doing this in the first place. What brought you to this profession? It's amazing what you can do when you just stop and breathe.
I love this practice, Faryl, and I do want to thank you for it, because I think so much of what you've taught me has made such a big difference, not only in how I feel in my day about myself, but in how I can show up for my patients. And I love the message that you have in that we're eternally evolving, we're eternally in healing, and that everything is energy.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to direct my audience to be able to find you and your incredible resources, because you have so much more magic to share. So please, for those of my audience members who are listening, let us know, where can we find you and your great work?
So there's a couple of different places. My website is mooreenergyhealing.com. And the more part is actually my last name. So Moore, energyhealing.com. There you can find a myriad of ways you can work with me. The best way right now, if you don't want private, if you want to work with me privately, you can find all of that information on the website. Would love to chat with you. I do free consultations. So if there's anything you just even want to touch on with me, you can go on and book that anytime you want to, right from my website. But I have a program coming up called Soul Revival. Soul Revival is a 6-week seasonal program. And the purpose of it is for us to get back to recognizing those cycles and rhythms that we used to follow and that we used to recognize as areas and times of our lives where we're more productive and less productive, and how to look at each season and find those cycles and rhythms that individually work for us, but that also work for the collective. Because we know things like the winter is the dark time. Winter is the time where we're supposed to hibernate a little bit, where we're supposed to really slumber, take care of ourselves. there isn't much to do, right? And yet we find ourselves fighting against that season all the time. So how can we actually not fight against the season?
Love it.
The one that's coming up is fall, and fall is going inward. So how beautiful is that? How beautiful is coming off of this crazy summertime where we've done all this amazing stuff and we've taken in all the sun and we've done all this and we reap what we sow, all those beautiful things we planted in the ground. Now we get to harvest it all. But all those things we planted for ourselves, those ideas, those things we wanted to bring to fruition for our families, this is the time to harvest. And so what does that look like? And how can we make it more productive for ourselves? Soul revival is that. It's digging back into what we used to do, what we used to know, getting back to our roots.
Love it. So cool. So cool.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, my friend. Thank you for all the magic that you perform every single day and for guiding so many of us through understanding our energetic healing better. I'm so grateful to you.
And let me just give you one last tip for those of you who have offices.
Yes,
One last tip. If you're into crystals at all.
Yes.
This little piece of stone called selenite. Selenite. Look,
I learned well from you, Faryl. I keep one right next to me always.
Okay. If you keep a piece of this somewhere in every office, and they're not expensive. I think this was like $2, by the way. So we're not talking about an expense, okay? If you keep this around your offices, it will help to keep the energy clear in your offices without having to spray something, without having to burn something. You know, people talk about sage. This little gem right here will help to keep the offices clean 24/7, 365.
Love it.
Okay.
What a great gift to give to somebody who's opening a new practice, by the way. Oh, thank you again, my friend. Before you leave us today, please tell us, what is your definition of happiness?
My definition of happiness is doing, being, and living in a way that is congruent and aligned for you.
Yes.
And only for you. There's no one else that you need to please but you. And as long as you can get up in the morning and look in that mirror and say, I am 100% authentically being me, doing me, and living me every day, that's happiness.
Oh, love that. I feel that. I feel that. Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome. Enjoy.
Thank you. And thank
I
you
wish you all peace and ease.
Absolutely. And thank you to all of you for joining us here today. And remember, when you feel good, that's when you can do good. Bye-bye.
Bye.